What's up, guys? Welcome back to Renaissance Dudes.
We're so glad you've decided to join us because today we're going to be doing part 2 of our board game review. I hope you were able to check out the games that we presented to you last time, and I think the ones this time are pretty much just as good. It's just that we had to split them into 2 different groups, so it wasn't really so much that those ones were our favorites, but they're just so many great games. So the first one that we're bringing to you here in part 2 is one of my favorite games for a couple of reasons. It is Carcassonne. So Carcassonne is a real city in France. It is one of the old medieval towns in France. You can look up some really cool pictures of it online, and I hope you will. But the game itself is what they call a tile laying game. So what that means is that you're going to need a fairly large table, and this will play anywhere from 2 to 5 players. And if you have some of the expansions that come with this, yes, there are expansions for this game, you can play with up to 6 people. But this one's a really fun, easy to get into game. I mean, it was one of the first games thanks to our friend Dan Johnson over at Tantrum House Games. Yes, we'd like for you to check out our friends over at Tantrum House if you're interested in board games. He introduced us to this game, and it's pretty simple because, again, all you have are these varying tiles. And within these tiles, you have cities, you have fields, you have roads, and you have little meeples, as they call them, which are just little wooden people. Meeples. And you have a certain number of those, and you can claim cities and fields and roads and build up points. But it is a really, really easy game to play, and it's one of those games that you're going to love to have friends over and play it with them because it's easy to introduce them to it. William, what do you like about Carcassonne?
I like that there is not too much luck, but just enough luck to make it fun. I don't like games that are all dependent on completely luck.
Yeah, there certainly is an element of choice here. So while you are depending on some luck with the draw of the particular tile that you take, at the same time you will have options as to where you can play that, and there's certainly some strategy as you look to own certain fields or other things that will get you points later in the game. I'm not going to explain the game, that's not our goal here, but suffice it to say, this is a really great game to play with your family. It doesn't take too long to play. The great thing is you can jump right in, and it's an easy game to play with other people, and it allows for discussion while you're playing. You can talk about other things, so with friends that's nice, and it doesn't take too long to play if all you play with is the base set. It takes maybe 35 minutes, which for us typically takes longer than that, 45. If you start to add expansions though, the game does get longer.
We also have a few expansions for Carcassonne. They just add extra tiles and extra points to the game that make it really, really fun.
Yeah, there's some added complexity when you start to add some of the expansions. So just start with the base game, and as per usual with expansions, you will need the base game to be able to play this. So I highly recommend Carcassonne, especially for a casual family night. Age is 7+ is what's recommended, so obviously you can probably stretch that depending on your child, so it's good fun for the whole family.
One of my favorite games is Azul. It is a tile game.
Yeah, it's different than what we just talked about where you're playing tiles on the table, which is a true tile playing game or a tile laying game. This is more done with actual little, they almost look like Starburst candies, but different colors. Yeah. And there are 5 different colors. 5 different colored tiles, and you're attempting to lay them in this board in a kind of a Sudoku kind of way where you can't have more than one of a particular color in a vertical column or a horizontal column. So there's an element of logic puzzle, but it's not difficult. In fact, the age on this is recommended as 8+. Yeah, it takes 30 to 45 minutes, and this one, again, is very easy to pick up for new people, which is great. In fact, the last 2 people we introduced this game to as a family, they won that particular game.
Wow.
So you don't have to be an expert in this, and to me, there is less strategy. I'm not going to say it's luck, but there's less strategy in this one than maybe some of the other games that we have put out there. But it's a beautiful game, and it's very peaceful. Most of the time, the actions that you take don't directly hurt anyone until the very end of the round, and even then, it's largely unintentional. Someone is always going to end up with some tiles that they don't want, and there are consequences for having too many tiles that you can't play. Again, I don't really want to explain the rules. I just want to tell you that it's a fun game. We really like it as a family, and it plays up to 4 people.
There are a couple of expansions for this game. We don't have any, but they're probably really fun.
As with the other games, you're going to need the base game, and I would go from there to decide if this is the type of game you like playing. If not, you can always move on, but if it is, like we think it will be, you can add on to the expansions later. So this next game is not necessarily one of William's favorites, but it's certainly one of mine and my wife's favorites. It is Splendor. And this is a fun game where you play the part of a jeweler. It's for 2 to 4 players and takes approximately 30 to 45 minutes to play. It's recommended for ages 10+, and the complexity is not too terribly difficult, but you are a jeweler who is building different gems or buying different gems, and to do so, you're going to use tokens to buy certain cards. Now, once you've acquired those cards, then the cards add to the amount of tokens or money that you have to spend to buy other things. So this is very much an engine building game where you're buying cards and building up your hand so that later you can buy even bigger and more expensive cards to hopefully obtain victory points and win the game. It's a beautiful game with the different jewels. It's also not that complex to understand. Most of the people that we've introduced this game to certainly seem to enjoy it. What are your thoughts about it, William?
Maybe I shouldn't share my thoughts about it.
There are a couple of expansions for this one as well. We don't own any of those because the base game is so much fun. Won the Golden Geek Award in 2014, and it's easy to see why, because of how interesting and fun it is. I also like games that can be played in a more compressed window of time, that although there are games that take longer and I enjoy them, this one's fun to get out, play for 30 to 45 minutes and be done.
Now, let's end this with one of the best games in the entire world. Resistance. This is a game that I know this video game got really popular around now. Among Us, this is basically the board game version of that game. I love it.
And if you're older, it is a version of what we called Mafia when I was a kid. It's a party game, so you're going to want a good number of people to play this game. It's not something that you can play with just 3 or 4 people in your family. You need at least 5 players. It can be chaotic. It doesn't have to take too long, but it certainly depends on who you're playing with, because it's more or less a free-for-all to determine who the spies are, or who the bad guys are in certain cases, and who the good guys or the resistance are. When you start the game, you're going to determine through a random process of distributing cards who are the bad guys, who are the good guys. The bad guys in most versions of the game will know who each other are, but they're in the minority. The good guys don't know who anybody is except for themselves, and they have to determine who the bad guys are. That's probably oversimplified, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun because it creates a lot of interaction between people, and certain personalities can really make this game interesting.
When I am the spy, I have a strategy for you if you get this game. When everybody opens their eyes, once you figure out if you're a spy or a resistance member, just go ahead and blame someone.
I believe there have been multiple versions of this. I think there are expansions. This is the basic game. It really didn't cost that much. I want to say we got it at Target for like $12, $10 to $12, but it is a nice, fun party game. Pretty easy to understand because if you're a spy, you want the majority of the missions to fail. If you're resistance, you want the majority to win. And people will have to use their intuition from there on how to play that. And there are lots of things that can happen during the game, but always fun. Well, we want to thank you guys very much for watching our video. It means a lot to us, and we love to share with you some of the things that we have going on in our lives and hope that you get a small sense of participation. And certainly, if there are things you'd like to know or like to see in future episodes,
Comment down below.